Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Team Wilpers Holiday Run Challenge 2025 crew. My name's Justin Harris. I'm one of the coaches at Team Wilpers running this challenge for you. I just want to get into a couple things. This is pre-recorded. My wife is graduating with her master's in nursing, and we have the ceremony and whatnot. But to jazz this up a little bit, I have a special guest, which I'll get into shortly on here to chat with us and to connect with us and to talk about threshold, because in this week we're doing power hills again, recycling those back in, but we're going to introduce or reintroduce, if you've done other challenges, threshold repeats. And we're going to have a conversation around running a little bit faster and how we approach thresholds, both as ourselves as athletes and as coaches. All right, but one first things first I want to just touch on before we get going is to make this challenge more specific to you, right? You did your 20-minute test and you had paces set for you. We have a default setting, which is what everyone is on at first. But if you want a little bit more difficult session, which in this challenge, the default in easy is at 30 minutes and the difficult is at 45 minutes during Monday through Friday, right? The whole purpose of this challenge is to be short and sweet and to keep us on track through the holiday season, which our calendars kind of blow out with a ton of different things on there: family, work, kids, training, all the good stuff, end of year stuff, closing things out, and it gets a little chaotic. So we want to keep you in the loop here and keep things short and sweet and keep them fresh with changing the workouts and different things instead of repeating and gradually progressing. It's a little bit more dynamic, we'll say. Okay. So in order to change things, all access, we have access to strength. You can change the difficulty levels, and we have training plans. So for $10 a month, $9.99, it's an amazing deal. You're missing out. It's beta. It will change eventually. So get on top of that. All right. The other thing is to make this thing work is, and why we're different than other challenges that just give you a static training plan, is we have a massive community involved. So it's like 12,000 people on the Facebook group that are interacting, sharing their wins, discussing when they're having challenges and how to help navigate that. And the community really jumps in on there. So make sure you follow us at Team Wilpers on Facebook and Team Wilpers Running. We also have a cycling challenge and stuff like that. So you can join the cycling group and then follow us on Facebook. And for me, you can follow me at J Harris Coaching on both platforms. All right. So we want to get into who our special guest is, and let's bring him on board. All right. Mr. Coach Ferry. All right. So for those who don't know, John is a co-founder of Team Wilpers and a coach at Team Wilpers. He's the one who really got the challenges off the ground and ran them for many years successfully, built a massive community. And so when we talk about community, we have this gentleman to thank. So we'll give you your flowers. Wow,
Oh, yeah, thank you.
you're
Virtual flowers.
Betty. So today, John, we're going to kind of check in about threshold. For me, threshold seems to be the easiest place to get wrong, because for a lot of different reasons, right? So, when we're running super fast, it makes a lot of sense. We just push as hard as we can. It's kind of best effort, VO2 max intervals and the fast stuff. It's the fun stuff, hit, boot camps, these different things that are kind of more on the exercising realm. But when we're really training, it's really important for us at Team Wilpers, right, to guide our clients, whether we're on the all access or we're on one-on-one clients, right, to guide them through this process of hitting all the different levels in the building per se, right? And there's different trainings that are like polarized training, so you do a lot of like speed, very little speedy stuff and a lot of aerobic stuff. There's all kind of different models. But when we talk about threshold, I find that my clients have a really difficult time understanding a lot of different things, the importance of it, what's actually happening, how to execute it, all those things. So now I'm going to ask you this question, and I think it's a little bit pertinent because we see you out there running. Now you're running track races and running the 200 and different stuff. We know you're coaching, track athletes and different things amongst, your private clients. So talk to me about threshold. What do you think, before we get into like what your fave and stuff is, what do you think is, why is threshold challenging? I'll just leave it super open ended. So for your perspective as an athlete and as a coach, why do you think it's so challenging for people?
Yeah, great question. I also think, it is probably like the most pivotal of our energy zones, like outside of aerobic. For anyone who's transitioning to road racing and going from races, all the way from the mile to the marathon, threshold is probably going to be your like most bread and butter energy zone and like opportunity for improvement. I think probably the difficulty in any sort of threshold lies in, kind of by definition, it's this pace where, can be referred to as comfortably uncomfortable, or a pace that you can maintain but just don't want to. So what my expectation is, without talking about it, of your athletes, my athletes, and athletes in general, is that people tend to sandbag that threshold a little bit because it feels uncomfortable and it feels quite difficult. It's at a part like where you're right peaking. If you go a little bit too fast, you're starting to generate lactate. Your body's going to start to feel, that pain that comes along with that. So people tend to be on the softer side and be a little bit too slow. And while you're still getting a high percentage of that, that's something that might fall around like half marathon pace for a lot of people. It's not quite all the way. And so what, in essence, you want to be training is taking yourself right to that limit, so that naturally you start to create adaptations in your body. So that's where I'm going to say I think it's hard. It's a very finite zone where you're kind of dancing on the razor's edge there, trying to like find the spot. And it can, if you go too much, you can kind of ruin your workout. But by backing off too much, you also are kind of sandbagging that session. So it's really trying to find that balance. And then in part of that, what we know people are notoriously bad at in general is pacing, is hitting a really particular pace and being able to hold it. So the athletes that are much better at pacing are also going to be much better at executing threshold workout. And with that, it's just repetition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that, this razor edge, right? Because I find that, like I'm a high responder to threshold.
Mm-hmm.
I did it in high school. I'm like, what the heck are we doing? Like, we're not going all out, like at the penultimate rep, because we had guys that we just like, no matter what the workout was, the second one was it was always best effort. Second one is as hard as you can go. And then the last one was, like whatever you had in the tank. So it made our high school team, really good at racing because
Yeah.
we raced every workout, right? And I kind of think about this, I call them maximizers, my maximizers clients that want to maximize everything. So it's like, well, if I didn't push as hard as I could, so I'm actually seeing like the other side of it a little bit more on my end, and I'm sure you see it too, right? It's like that two buckets, right? They're either pushing a little bit too over because they're like, well, like I'm not, I'm used to running this speed, and it's like, no, like what we're doing here, right? And then some people who are scared of it, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna like bail out on it or do too less, and
Yeah.
it's really this kind of fine zone that you talk about. But finally, in high school, what ended up happening was like when a bunch of the guys graduated, and it was like me and one underclassman, and he was just like, can we please just try this workout for a little bit? And dude, we ran so fast in like the 800 and the 1,000, even though we were 2 milers, without even like touching on, speed work or whatever. So it kind of opened up my eyes to it. Um, Talk to me about your running, so like when you do threshold and stuff, like, I kind of have this question for you, is like, Coach Ferry's faves, right? Maybe you should start that as like something like Coach Ferry's faves, weekly faves, right?
Yeah.
Shorter or longer intervals, right? Because, threshold is really like, we can just say, like, depending on the zone system, right? Like in a 3-zone system, it's like smooth is aerobic, steady is all the both threshold zones, and then hard is VO2 max and up. In a 5-zone system, we start separating out, to tempo, more marathon stuff, and threshold repeats, and breaking up the intervals to more like half marathon ish, right? So, in your own personal experience with training, do you prefer like shorter threshold repeats or longer threshold repeats? So like, do you prefer like 1K intervals on like 90 seconds rest, or do you prefer like, 2-mile reps with
Yeah.
like 3 minutes rest and just grind it out? So talk to me about some of your experience and what you enjoy.
Yeah, totally. I think to start, like I would say threshold characterized by lengthy periods of work with short recovery. So
Yeah, we should define it.
yeah, so someone was asking me the other day, where they're like, "Well, I saw this workout. It's like 3-minute intervals with 3 minutes off," and I was like, "No, not the right ratio.
Yeah, yeah.
Ratios of work to recovery for
Mhm.
every energy zone, and threshold is lots of work, little recovery.
Yeah.
So When I have athletes starting into it, or even experienced athletes that are at the beginning of a season, I'll either look at their pace is a big difference. So sometimes it'll be by time, sometimes it'll be by distance. But I think 1Ks are a great way to come in. And the funny thing with 1Ks is everybody always thinks they're going to be the easiest part, but sometimes it's like you're into rhythm, you're feeling good, and by like shortening the mile repeats to a K and having more of them, because you don't really recover. The goal is not to have a full recovery on that short rest. It's just to manage heart rate. Make sure things don't like fly outside of the zone. So the Ks can be quite hard. What I'm ultimately looking to do, I'll start with Ks, and usually the pinnacle of threshold for most people is going to be like 3 to 4 miles of total time at threshold, representing somewhere between like 30 and 40 minutes. I have a few outliers that do like 3 mile repeats at threshold, like all the way up to 9 miles. And that is, let's just say that is an advanced level workout.
Do not try at home, kids.
Do not try that. I can't do that workout without question.
Yeah.
But so the parameters that I'm usually looking for in threshold, it's like 20 minutes to 40 minutes. 40 minutes tends to be like the penultimate of threshold workout, but that is intense amount of time. I would say 90% of people never make it quite that far. It tends to like fall somewhere in like the 30 to 35-minute range at peak. But if you're starting it, you have to start at the bottom. That's just kind of how it goes. So I think 4-minute intervals is usually where I start a non-worker outer threshold person, somewhere around 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll start it with as much as a 2-minute recovery, but never any more than a 2-minute recovery. And 2 minutes that's like the intro level of the workout. So 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off, and I look for like 12 total minutes at zone.
Yeah.
The goal with that over the course of about like 4 to 5 to 6 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark, is to be up above somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes of total time at zone, and have brought that rest down to about 90 seconds at maximum during those intervals. So whether it's Ks, whether it's miles, whether it's miles plus a K, that's what I'm looking at. It's like that total time, because as I mentioned, the recoveries in this workout, in a threshold workout, as opposed to some others, the goal is not to recover all the way. The goal is to get a bit of a reprieve and to be right back in, so you're sustaining that same zone start to finish. So the actual like breakdown of the workout, as long as it's like longer sets, shorter recoveries, I say a lot, it's like we're not doing fine needlework here, like we're painting with a broad brush, and we can do it a lot of ways as long as we're getting that total time.
Yeah, no, the total time is right. So like that's one-on-one coaching, right? Is how we're nuanced about that, right? But this idea of like I think it's important to define like threshold, right? And so like the metaphor I give, it's like we're baking cookies, right? And like for VO2 max, it's like 1-to-1, right? If we go 3 minutes, we rest 3 minutes, right? Because the key there is velocity. That we're trying everything to do to maintain the quality of the velocity, at peak, and then we need full rest so we can keep running and moving or biking at that velocity or power output, right? So threshold's under it, and it's like we're really working on the internal pump system, right? So like mitochondria taking glucose, like converting it to energy, and like exporting lactate, and it's basically the body is like buffering. We say buffering lactate, right? It's like it can process it, right? But we don't want so long a recovery that the heart rate goes all the way down, and then we're not buffering as much, and then like 3/4 of the interval we're like just getting back up, and then we're only working on it for a little bit. So I say it's like we're baking cookies, right? It's not the best analogy, but like we don't want to like leave them in there and burn them because the temperature's up. We want to put them in, and then we got to just take them out for a little bit, and then like don't wait too long, and then put them back in, so that we're having time of actually cooking it without overcooking it, right? And how do you ever have the conversation around, and we'll get back to what your Ferry's faves are for you personally, but do you ever get the conversation of like that was surprisingly challenging?
It's always the 1Ks, because I do this little tricky thing in a lot of season planning where I'll start, as I said, with 1Ks, but I'll do it on like usually 90 seconds or 2 minutes of rest early in the season, getting people into it because it's a manageable distance, and I'll make sure they have the recovery. But then I'll put the same workout in there about like 8 to 10 weeks later, but they'll cut the recovery all the way down to 60 seconds. So by that point of their training cycle, they've been doing, mile repeats, 2,000 meter repeats, 3K repeats, 2 mile repeats. And they see the 1Ks back on there again. They're like, what's this workout like? Is this our down week or something? And I'm like, yeah, sure thing. Go to like, give it a try. And they just don't notice that like 120 or 90-second recovery is down to 60. And the second the workout ends, I know my phone just starts lighting up where people are like, oh my God, like what happened? Like, am I losing my fitness? And I'm like, no, it was just a hard workout.
Yeah. Because you're pulling out the cookies with not enough time to. So like if you look at heart rate, right? Like heart rate goes up slowly through the interval, and then in VO2 max, like we want like almost full recovery. It drops big time. This is like the heart rate drops down a little bit, and then we're hitting it again, right? And then it drops down a little bit, and so net it's like ended up rising all the way through, but it's these little bumps versus like these big recoveries, and the heart rate's kind of staying in check. Right.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. This is the nuance of one-on-one coaching, right? Is like how we're progressing, what we're trying to do on. So like, trying to put people in buckets. It's like, are they a high responder to VO2 max? And like, so therefore I need to kind of keep velocity as paramount through their marathon build, which, marathon, it's like, we can, debate it, but like essentially it's like long run or weekly volume is like the highest priority, and then it's like thresholds next, then VO2 max next, then strength. They're all priorities, but you have to have your hierarchy of like, okay, if like the strength or VO2 max is beating us up, and then we can't do threshold or we're exhausted for the long run, like, we need to adjust the lower priority items, right? And so it's the reverse, essentially for the 5K, right? And then threshold, or half marathon stuff in the middle. But like if someone's like a high responder to things, like I'll keep their threshold intervals at 1K 4 minutes, and maybe I'll get to 6, but like they need a little bit more velocity to feel like they're getting something, because I'm sometimes tuning down VO2 max, which is their strength. And I think too many coaches sometimes, or beginner coaches, work on areas of weakness, and if like your area of weakness is like a it's like a 2 and your strength is like a 7, we spend so much time moving a 2 to a 3, and a 7 goes to like a 4, and like net, we're not that good, right? But like my longer people, it's like they feel really comfy in like, 8, 10, 12 minute, long intervals. And I kind of do time because it could be a little easier to manage on the tread and stuff without having to do like the complicated math. So let me ask you this. How do you trying to like articulate the question? Yeah. How do you manage athletes, like beginning athletes with threshold versus like someone you've been coaching for a couple of years? Like what's the, what would you say is like the difference in the conversation? Like, maybe where you start at and where you get to, what are some metaphors you use to explain it? Or what are your like catch, phrases where like people like, like, and kind of walk me through like how you actually coach people in threshold. So we talk technical, we kind of defined it, but like the nuance of like what one-on-one coaching looks like, and what we try to bring into the challenge is a little, we try to give a little taste of it, but
Yeah, for sure. Well, the nice thing, obviously, when we are working individually with athletes is like we're bringing some decent technology along with us. And everything gets to be a little bit more curated because we've got more data points, we've got, some tools at our disposal. And so if you think there are a couple ways to determine threshold, right, I think, which are worth mentioning. Probably the most accurate is like a full lab test where they're doing finger pricks and measuring lactate like in real time. And so the amount of people who've had this done is going to be incredibly small, myself included. Like I've never gone as far as needing to do like finger prick tests. But if you're talking with like pro level athletes, that's a great way. The second level is also a lab test where they do kind of, like max heart rate stress tests, things like that. They determine your 3 different thresholds like aerobic, lactic, and anaerobic, and they'll kind of give you those numbers. You can get them really fine dialed in. And then I think there's kind of the third way, which is probably how 99.9% of people, once again, myself included, are determining threshold, which is either by some sort of test, like a 20-minute test, or by doing a race, like a 5K race, a 10K race. Keep in mind, the longer the race, probably the less accurate it has to do with like what your threshold is. So people are racing the half marathon. You're going to get a threshold, but it kind of goes back to the sandbagging of threshold. It's probably not as accurate to your actual threshold pace unless you're just an incredible half marathoner. And then you might get it fairly accurate. So those are kind of the three ways to go in it there. And so then if I'm working with a single athlete, I'll start on kind of the beginner side of it. The first thing I'm trying to do with those athletes is find a threshold pace that we feel good about. That I look at their race performances and I kind of say like, all right, you've been running intervals at this pace, and maybe that's accurate, maybe it's not, maybe it's whatever. And so first thing I'll do is kind of start with something like a 3x4 minute, 2-minute best, and it's always I'll kind of share this with athletes. It's like early on in a coach-athlete relationship, every workout is a workout, but every workout is also a test. And I have like kind of my series and progressions where I'm like, well, I'm going to give you this one, and I'm going to set this as your pace goal. And if you can do it, then great. So step 2 is not to make it faster. Step 2 is to make more time in zone. And if I go through a 2, 3, 4 week progression and I all of a sudden get up to 20 minutes of time at zone, and people are like, this is not that bad, like I'm coasting, then I'll just move the pace a little bit faster. And once again, I don't necessarily make it faster and then add more time at zone. I'll make it faster. We go all the way back to the beginning, and I'll say, all right, now we're going to go through these check mark boxes again. And I like to remind people, I have one athlete in particular, he's up in Canada, so he's just like a treadmill monster. His workouts are like always so consistent, it bothers me. Like, because if I can't get him to fail the workout, then I'm not ultimately pushing him hard enough, even at a threshold workout. So where we talk about, it's not about how hard you can go, but if I give him a tough workout of like 2-mile repeats, he's got 33 minutes of time at zone, and it's like perfect time and time again, it bothers me because I want him sometimes to fail at those workouts. Like, you're supposed to fail. That's how you know you're like kind of being pushed right to the limit. Now, if you fail every time, you've got another problem. But that's kind of the way that I would talk with an athlete about it. I say like, all right, let's determine our pace here. And we're going to go through this series of like, 2, 3, 4 rounds of work. We're going to build your total amount of time at threshold to get into that ideal bucket. I talked like 20 minutes to 40 minutes, 40 minutes being very advanced, 20 minutes being, a good threshold workout, and probably a peak or kind of a sweet spot once people are deep into it of like 30 minutes of total time afterwards. And I try to just kind of move them up. And then, on the flip side, for very advanced athletes, the only real difference is just kind of that starting point. If I think about, like, I'll still start with the 1Ks or 4-minute repeats or something like that. It'll just be more reps of the same workout. Maybe the recovery is a little bit shorter, but the goal is still the same. It's the workout is the workout, but the workout is a test. I want to see how well it's executed over the course of the workout. And if the athlete can do it, we move it up a little bit more. And I find, we use a coaching platform called Training Peaks. You not only get to like kind of get the eyesight on the workout and know like where it is, but people be familiar from like Power Zone as well. There's this TSS score, training stress score that goes along with it. So whenever I build like training plans, whether it's for the group or individual, etc., I'm using those TSS scores to kind of cross-reference in my own mind. Like, am I advancing the difficulty of this workout with time and zone, or is this workout actually not as hard as I thought? After doing this for a better part of a decade at this point, like my mental progressions are pretty good at it, but it's always a really nice way to look. And I think when talking with any athlete, beginner or super advanced, you look at it and you say like, hey, like last week was a 68. This week is a 72. Next week is a 76. You see how this progression is going. These workouts are getting a little bit more advanced, a little bit more advanced, and a little bit more advanced. And it's just like a great, I think, comparative metric to be able to quantify that for people a little bit.
Yeah, for the visual learners, right? Because again, I think threshold is just not only nuance. It's like, could you run faster? Yes.
Yeah.
But is that the point of the session? Well, what if I don't run faster, how am I going to get better? And it's like, yeah, well, you can't just run as
For
fast
the
as you can,
second
not
day.
every day. Yeah, exactly, right? So it just keeps like going in this like loop of like if I'm only focused on pace and it's a slower pace, and then as I do it, it's like frog in boiling water, the analogy, right? Like
Yep.
threshold just builds up, and all of a sudden you're like, crap, this is like challenging. I actually have to push, but this is a slower pace, and so am I not good anymore? And it's like, no, like, and so that these are some of the conversation I have. It's like, one client said to me after a couple of years, was like, Coach, I finally think I figured out threshold. It's not about going necessarily faster in the session. It's just how comfortable can I make the uncomfortable? And I said, done. Hashtag it,
There we go.
like, because it's time and zone. That's really what it's about, because we're working on that infrastructure to be able to buffer it. And I tend to say, like, we're trying to teach you as coaches is how to have those conversations with yourself
Mhm.
when it gets hard, right?
Mhm.
Because if I say is if your come to Jesus moment is in the race, the first one, you're
It'll be
screwed.
tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. So it's like threshold is that place where, progression run to threshold repeats, steady state runs are different, right? It's like more tempo down, marathon pace, over unders. Like there's so many different ways we can tackle it. And there's all of these like minute changes of like, Justin, over here, Justin, you suck. You can't hold these paces. And hey, Justin, like we want to run faster. See that guy up there, right? And they're just like chirping in your head. And it's like, I say, who's walking the dog? Who's in charge here, right? And it's like, hey, look, like I hear you, but this is getting challenging. So for yourself as an athlete, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say maybe kind of a one final point. Because we talk about threshold is associated with this huge array of races as
Yeah, yeah.
well. But you kind of touched on this earlier, but in terms of getting fast versus getting efficient, which is what I always think like threshold and slower. So threshold to
Yeah.
half marathon, our tempo workouts, our endurance workouts.
Yeah.
There's like a very limited opportunity to get faster. Maybe unpopular opinion. Which is interesting because this probably represents like 99% of the workouts that people do, like threshold and slower.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about getting efficient. Like the marathon is about efficiency. The half marathon is about efficiency. Certainly as you get down close to the 10K, it's a
Yeah.
little bit more like threshold induced, but it's all about developing efficiency.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about, then people wanting to get a little bit faster, and I kind of mentioned, I was like, well, that's for like the other workout of the week.
Yes. Yeah.
You want to get efficient, and then want to get fast, and then you want to be able to go long. It's like obviously
Yeah.
our 1, 2, 3 punch,
Yeah.
but very rarely are you working at all three things at the same time.
Yeah, you can't, and it's one retards the other. So I just put in two buckets. There's most of the thing we're doing, we're trying to be efficient, so we're trying to get more fuel like
Yep.
gas per mile, fuel mileage,
Yep.
like in the car, like a Prius. We want to be super efficient on very little fuel. And then the other stuff, which is spicy, it's like little goes a long way. Is horsepower. We're trying to increase horsepower, and this is like what like Gustav Eden and Christian Blumfeld and Alexander Olav Blue did, really showed with triathlon is like, that for the Olympic style hour and 45 minutes. I mean, they're doing three sports, but
Yep.
it's like it's all horsepower. Just get VO2 max up. Like that's the key. And then to like 6 months later do really well in the Ironman, it was like we had to tune down horsepower because it cost a lot calorie wise and be more efficient. But you see this in events. Someone's good at the 15, eventually they're not good at the 1500 on the track. And then where do they go? They're 5K. And then all of a sudden, because they have that speed, and they just developed a little bit more efficient in volume, now they're a world beater in the 5K. And eventually they tap out and they go to the 10K. And eventually they go to the marathon. And it's like this fresh new person, but speed kills, right? So you're actually.
And then they're a terrible 1500-meter runner.
Yeah, exactly. Because they've become, it's like, we have a Prius and a Ferrari. If I ask you to do 100 miles on the highway, a Prius bolts are rattling, because the max speed is 120. I don't know what it is, but you get what I'm saying? Like it's a higher capacity, right? But if we really do the work at 60 miles and under and really 30 and 40 miles an hour, that sucker is efficient. It's burning fat for fuel. It can go forever. And then that first floor, instead of being this high, is that high, right? And then we throw on lactate buffering, and then we throw all the levels on above it, and then we've raised the ceiling, right? By going from the bottom up. And then if you raise the VO2 max, then you're working on the upper floors. I just find too many people confuse the two. All right, let me end on this note for you, and then I'm going to get into week 4 a little bit for people and send you off on your way. Your personal favorite threshold workout, you as an athlete, not you as a coach. You were able to explain things and the trajectory and how you progress athletes, but you as an athlete and your experience is like, what is a threshold workout or session that allows you to like maybe, it's just your favorite, and tell us why it's your favorite.
I like the 2K repeats. 2K repeats were somewhere between, I would love to say that I do them on 90 seconds rest, but it's really 2 minutes. I tell other people to do them on 90 seconds rest, but
it sucks doing your own workouts. I did a workout with Matt, and I was like, "Who planned this one? Because this is brutal."
The old "do as I say and not as I do" sort of scenario.
We've done them though.
Yeah. So. I have done it. 2K for me is a great distance. So that's we're breaking down to what, basically like 1.25 mile at that point. I mentioned the difference earlier for like the Ks versus the miles, and then obviously like 2Ks and 2 miles, etc. And there is like a flow to it. Like once you're in the set, the hard thing with the Ks is like you're breaking your rhythm. Even by the time you get to the miles, like those things can start to build up. And, so I think maybe I like 2Ks because it allows you to like kind of keep the momentum of the set. You're hanging on. It's a long block, but not all the way to like 2 miles. 2 miles is a pretty advanced like set by the time you get there. But it allows the workout to like click by a little bit faster for me. It definitely is challenging. It's getting like a very extended time period. It's on short rest. But for something like that, I'm probably personally looking at like 3 to 4 reps at 2K. It's like that's going to be, unless I'm awfully darn fit, that's going to be about the whole workout. And it's definitely a go-to. I like to slip it in from time to time. I also think 2K is like a weird distance. So when you're talking about like the little mental tricks of like making it easy time-wise versus distance, like I actually love keeping it distance-based because then I have to like do the math while trying to run and trying to keep my pace, and I'm like, wait, what is 2K in miles? 1.62. So I left at 3.44. It helps pass the time.
You go in the rabbit hole of doing runner math, and so I mean that's a good place because 800s or miles, it's like too much comparison. And you're like, oh, I'm having a crappy workout. This is family friendly, so I'll be use the appropriate words. But you have a crappy workout, and you're like, oh, it's crappy, but it's like again, it's time and zone, right? Like so 2K repeats. That was not my jam, for me because it was like. I loved we did a lot of 1K repeats and that was like my go-to, or progression runs. Like for me, I often had it's ironic is when I race, long steady efforts are where I'm better at, but in training, long steady efforts like are this like no man's land. I just like it just hurts so much. So kudos to you. All right, John, thanks for jumping on and joining us, special guest. All right, for the pre-recorded thing. So we appreciate you. I know a lot of athletes miss you here, and thanks for jumping on and giving us a little bit of your input on threshold. All right, buddy.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, later. Enjoy your week.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so Coach Ferry's fave. So pretty cool to hear his perception. And one of the neat things at Team Wilpers is this idea of like, we have a bunch of different coaches and like, there's even differences between us coaches a little bit, right? And that's the beauty of, what we have at Team Wilpers is a lot of different coaches and a lot of knowledge, right? If we combined all the knowledge of all our coaches of the years coaching and stuff, it'd be a lot. And the success rate that we've had with clients, to help them progress and PR and qualify for things is just really awesome to see. So, if you're seeing this challenge stuff and you're enjoying the challenge, that's just like, we're just giving you crumbs there, right? Because we have to, right? It's, but we want to teach you some of the principles of training smart, and it might not be super dynamic and might not be, the most, interactive or engaging bit. And it's for a reason, right? Because we want to teach you the basics and have those basics just be repeatable over and over again. And many of you, focus on pace and just, kind of blow up the sessions and wonder why we're getting hurt or why we're getting sick or why we're kind of stagnating or stalling out. So keep that in mind. Look for consultations to like check in with people just so they can fine tune it. It's a cheap, easy way to go about it. And then one-on-one coaching, which we've had, plenty of people jump to that level and just like, it's totally different. Right. And so this conversation today was kind of show you the inner outs, inner workings, kind of the behind the Wizard of Oz curtains of who's pulling the levers of like what we're really about. And, this happens with all our coaches, of trying to figure out what's working for you. So week 4 is power hills, threshold repeats. So we're just trying to put the cookies in the oven and pull them out for a little bit and put them back in and pull them out for a little bit and put them back in for a while. And so, the talking test is really important. That's something we didn't talk about. Is if you talk, lactate production is directly correlated and related to respiratory rate. So if you are talking like this, like you're not going fast enough. So if you're, like someone has said hello and you're like, hi, right? You've gone well into VO2 max and you're doing it too much. So threshold, if someone to talk to you or someone to come up, hey, what's for dinner? Or hey, like, what do you got going on today? Or someone to call really quick, you'd be like, hey, what's going on? Like in the middle of a workout, okay, yeah, like I'll be able to get to it later. Okay. Yep. Okay, good. Bye. Like short, breathy sentences, kind of old school Twitter version. And that'll put you in the right place. Okay. So, and then the long run, we have a hilly long run, which, you can play around with the elevation on tread. If you come to a T on the road and right is hilly and left is flat, go right outside. Keep the intensity down. The hills are going to add more intensity. So keep the intensity down. Just roll through it. Keep your heart rate on the lower side. You want to be chatty the entire time. Don't make it a triple whammy. We're going longer. We're going now harder because of the hills. And then you're imparting more effort into it to run a certain pace. Nobody got time for that stuff. All right. So cut it out. All right. So it is pre-recorded, so you can comment on the Facebook. And if any questions pop up, I'll get to them on Saturday. Again, thanks for supporting us. Thanks for joining the challenge. Tell your friends, tell everyone, jump on that all access, because at the end of the day, the all access stuff is, it's really a steal and it's a beta price. So get on top of it and get the information before it heads out the door. Anyway. All right. See you all in week number 5. Adios. Enjoy week number